What speaker, madam, and she's going to talk about the ESG and all. Because need of the hour today, everybody is talking about the ESG and they are all working on it. So that is why today we bought madam, and we will also. I will also listen. Madam is also going to give a detailed about ESG. Maybe you can also after that you can ask the question. Any question is there? One to one you can ask. So it will be open for question and answer session. The final. Also, other alternate you can also write to IWMA always. What are the questions? We will try to get the clarification from the speakers later on also. What are the presentation also? It will be shared to you to upgrade your industries and for knowledge. And basically, for IWMA, Industrial Waste Management Association is working almost 20 years plus for to serve the industries. So I'm also from industry. So I'm running electrocoding industry. Then only I become a member of this industry. Then I have joined as a executive committee, I joined secretary. Then now, sorry. Now I'm heading this association. It's an NGO only. See, I got a very good knowledge after joining this IWMA only. In fact, recently also, one of the university, I can say, because of this IWMA experience, Anna University has given me the one opportunity for climate exchange. The climate exchange, so I am also part of it. So they are starting ME climate exchange subject. So in that they have appointed one of my IWMA, not from Bhaskar and Singh. So because of IWMA experience, we are getting lot of this kind of honoring. Maybe in the surrounding Chennai, surrounding a lot of engineering colleges are there, and even medical colleges also there. So some of the engineering college, I am going and giving some lectures for the environment. Some of the engineering college they give me honorary post for professor also. World Tech University there in Avadi. So they gave me the post of professor. Why I'm telling this for industries? So industries you can learn lot from IWMA. That is my so that is why Bhaskaran has become a chairman of this association. I also learned a lot because I am not a engineer or something like that. I just I'm doing only arts and science only. I did. After that, joining the IWMA only, I learned a lot from IWMA. So you can also join with IWMA as a member or EC member or sorry, not a member, EC member or some other office where post also vacancies coming up. Now, next month we have an election also. If you want, you can participate and you will scale up your knowledge. So that is additional. Apart from this, if you want to have any specific topics, like today we got some speaker, maybe another 2, 3 speakers already we have lined up because a lot of speakers are there coming. They want to share the knowledge to IWMA members. So that is why they are also coming to us. So we are also lined up 2, 3 speakers for next couple of months. Maybe if you want a more particular any particular thing, we can arrange for that. So please write to us, or you can always WhatsApp me, or you have a group, and the IWMA member industry group is also there. So you can post there also, and we can have an exchange of ideas also. Even some of the waste nowadays, uh, waste is not coming to IWMA. That is our Ramki, because all the waste has been recycled. That is our aim. So that is why we are conducting this kind of programs. But wherever I go, I give this kind of experiences. For example, one cotton waste gloves. So now that has been used as a raw material. We thought it is a waste. It is not a waste. Now it has become a raw material for the some industry. The leading industry, cement industry, they are taking it, but the cotton waste. So that industry has been set up in Nambatur last 5, 6 years back. Now they are doing good job. And in fact, they will not believe the 5 engineers are working, and he's also getting a good business. So other side is saving the environment. Otherwise, what we do, literally, we are burning the cotton waste clothes. Instead of that, Because some people they say we are having only 10 kg, 5 kg. That is why we are burning. Don't burn. Don't spoil the environment, because always so the earth has been given to us. நம்மளுடைய futures generation is நம்மளுடைய சந்ததிகளை we have to we have to give back to them. Otherwise, if we keep on spoiling them, definitely நமக்கு தான் ப்ராப்ளம். நம்மளுடைய ஹெரிடிட்டி வந்து நம்மளுடைய ஜென்ரேஷன் மை டாட்டர் ஆர் கிட் வாட் தே ஆர் கோயிங் டு யூஸ். ஸோ நம்ம இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பிளாஸ்டிக் வேஸ்ட்டோ ஆர் காட்டன் வேஸ்ட்டோ வி பர்ன், திஸ் வில் அஃபெக்ட் த எர்த். கண்டிப்பாக அதை டு அவாய்ட், அட்லீஸ்ட் யூ கேன் ட்ரை டு டூ சம்திங். கிளஸ்டர் மாதிரி ஃபார்ம் பண்ணி யூ கேன் பேஸ் எக்ஸாம்பிள் அம்பத்தூர் மாடல் எக்ஸாம்பிள். பட் அதர் estate, I am also in Vallam, Madagal, Sipcot and near Varagadam. So I am also trying to do there. Maybe if you combine with the 10-15 people, we can have a small facility over there. We collect 100 kg or one, it will become 110, 210. Then we can give it to service provider. He will take it, he will come and take, and he will give it to the whatever the cement industry or whoever is needed. That is one example. In fact, a plastic PET bottle, what we are doing, and plastic PET bottles normally. Hello. Yes, sir. No, hello. Sorry. I thought got disconnected. PET bottle we are just throwing in the earth. So PET, plastic PET bottle will not get composed at all. Instead of that, some people are collecting PET bottles for 14 rupees per kg, and again they are sending it to one textile industry in Tirupur. So he is taking it for 18 rupees. So how the revenue generation? So that is one part. Other part, see all the plastic PET bottles, they are recycling it and making the T-shirt. You will not believe. Leading T-shirt, they are using the raw material, one of the raw material. So entire plastic will not be used. So 10 to 15% they are being using, and tons of plastic PET bottle has been collected, and they are being using it. In fact, it has been published in their website itself. It has been proved to worldwide, and it has been sent to all the worldwide also. All the T-shirt, leading T-shirt, branded T-shirts, is manufactured by through them only, through Tirupur. So that kind of waste is being reused. So please try to reuse any kind of waste. Maybe if you have waste also, you can come back. You can come back to always IWMA. Sir, this is a problem we are having. Maybe if you have a tie up with them. Even recently, I come across Neeri. They also they are asking me. So, what are all the your industries facing the problem? Neeri is a big this organization. So they came last week actually. In fact, they are organizing one seminar also for maybe in the next month. So you can give your problem statements. So they were ready to give you the solutions. At least we will get the solution. If not IWMA, through IWMA, we will go to the nearest scientist. So scientists will give you some solutions in workable models, maybe pilot model also. Even same way, we have gone to the CLRA last 7-8 years back. One of the big industry, they had some problem in textile wastewater. So there they couldn't manage it. So they came to IWMA. IWMA spent almost 10 lakhs worth of amount, and we have gone to the CLRI. CLRI given a small study. For the entire amount was spent by IWMA, and the industry now is not a member of IWMA also, because that kind of technology we have given to the industry. It's called Frudenberg. That is the name. I can say the name. It's a big company. So now their hazardous waste not coming because of this good technology from CLRI. Oh, no, now they are using it in entire all. See, they have 120 plants in the world, so they are adopting it, and all the waste has not been coming from the industries. So maximum they are reusing it. So that kind of technology has been given by IWMA. So you can also. That's why we are again insisting industries. Please come forward, and you can also write to us or WhatsApp through. as we will try to give some solution. Because see, 100 problems if we give, at least we will try to give 10 problems we can try to solve with the help of leading institutions. So that is why recently also one problem I have given to VIT College of Chennai. So they are also working on it. It's a very tough project, but we are working on it. We will, I think it will come up in another 6 to 7 months. So that is possible. And industries, again, today's topic, ESG. ESG is a good topic, need of the hour. That is why today we have called the madam. And madam is going to give up elaborate about this ESG. We will listen from madam, and we will also discuss one-to-one after maybe in the 11:30 or 11:45. Over to you, Subala. Thank you, madam. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for welcome address, sir. Without any further ado, we will start our session for the day with the introduction of the speaker. Ms. Swasthi Krithivasan, who has completed BE Civil Engineering in CIT Coimbatore, working as a head decarbonization on ESG in Conserve Consultants Pvt Ltd, and also worked as a lead engineer decarbonization, and she has experience in 9 years experience in her field. Thank you for accepting our invite and kindly take over the session, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bala. Thank you, Bhaskaran sir. It was a wonderful introduction about how waste could be viewed at another perspective. Generally, waste is not, there is no such a thing called waste. People used to say whenever you use a thing, it becomes a waste. Ideal scenario in positive thinking of sustainability aspect of waste. So waste cannot be waste as such. Waste is just a a kind of resource or a raw material which is just in the wrong place in the wrong time. That is what we used to say in our terminology, wherever, even in the personal front or also in the professional front, waste is not actually a waste. So what Bhaskaran sir just mentioned is very thoughtful, very thought provoking. So thank you so much for your speech, sir, Bhaskaran sir. So yeah, let us start with the session. Allow me to share the screen for today. So hope my screen is visible to everybody.
Ma'am, it is not visible. Yeah, now it is visible.
Visible, yes. Okay. Am I also audible clearly, Bala?
Ma'am, you are loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So talking about today's topic, we will deep dive into what is carbon footprinting for a company as well as at a product point of view. So as Bhaskaran sir was mentioning, ESG is now the recent trend, and behind ESG, whatever the key aspect which every company or every person should focus on is on the carbon emissions or the GHG emissions we call it for. And then today we are trying to focus on how Indian industries, SMEs, all manufacturing sectors or even real estate sectors, they can leverage their sustainability leadership towards driving or steering towards carbon reduction and also be prepared for the future upcoming regulatory readiness. So this is the agenda for today. So you can, as Bala Bhaskaran sir mentioned, we do have planned for 5 to 10 minutes question and answer session towards the end. If we do not have time by any chance, you can also write email to IWMA or my email ID whenever you have time. We can also catch up through IWMA. So for the subtopics we have planned for today, we start off with refreshing what is corporate carbon level footprint, which is the CCF. And then we'll move on towards having an overview discussion about product level carbon footprint. And then we'll try to link how, if a company has a CCF and they are trying to have a PCF, how these two can be linked and then worked smoothly towards disclosures. And then we'll have a deep dive a discussion about LCA, how LCA is being done manually, how there are tools and technologies to help improve to get the reach from all the industries in India. And then we'll talk about with LCA, how all the Indian companies or manufacturing industries can be prepared for the upcoming regulations and statutory requirements. And we'll also have one slide which summarizes a typical sustainability journey of Indian industries. and we'll run through 2-3 case studies, which we have done in the company Conserve Consultants. If time permits, we will also have a detailed question and answer for any of your topics if you may have. So talking about carbon corporate carbon footprint, I hear that previous sessions in IWMA webinar was focused on corporate carbon footprint, carbon accounting and everything. So I just wanted to touch very high level overview about that here. So if you can talk about, in corporate carbon footprint or the CCF, it is mainly calculating or estimating the total quantity or total amount of greenhouse gas emissions which is happening due to the company's or the organization's activities as a corporate level, right? So talking about the GHG emissions, there are basically 7 greenhouse gases which contributes to global warming and climate change. And everybody keeps talking about 1.5 degree targets, 2 degree targets. So all the costs due to these buzzwords of carbon and everything is due to the 7 GHG gases which is causing global warming and climate change happening in Earth. So this tabular column, I don't want to go in detail. You can just have a reference later on. So that there are the 7 list of gases which is given. It has lifetime. Every gas as a molecule has a lifetime in the atmosphere. It varies. And accordingly, with respect to having the baseline of carbon dioxide as a reference gas, all the other 6 gases have been given a reference number called the GWP or the global warming potential, and we try to account in terms of scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So I will, in the subsequent slides, I will also explain more about it. But in the right-hand side, the pictorial representation gives an idea of which gas is predominantly present in the atmosphere. You can see the carbon dioxide, which is mostly available, which is due to happening due to the transportation and combustion of fossil fuels like petrol, diesel, coal. So it is widely seen in any industries and predominantly from the transportation sector due to ICE engine vehicles. And the second contributing gas is the methane, which is coming from waste, waste which is being sent and led to decompose in landfill. So that is a major precursor, major cause for methane gas emissions. And similarly, we have nitrous oxide coming from automobile manufacturing and construction activities, and PFCs, HFCs from each of the production or manufacturing industries. These are specific selective GHG gases which might not be very much predominantly available in the atmosphere. However, they are having the impact in terms of the global warming potential with respect to carbon dioxide is huge. So we need to focus on calculating it and then reducing it in the over the year time. So I think we'll move on to, I will just give an overview of how the carbon emissions or the GHG emissions is being calculated at industry level or a company level. So this is the methodology we usually adopt. We categorize it as scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Scope 1 is basically your direct emissions of GHG gases, which is happening within your own company premises. So let's say an industry, a steel manufacturing industry is having a blast furnace setup, and it also uses coal, diesel, fossil fuels and everything, and it has its own thermal power plant for electricity production and everything. So all the fuel which is being combusted on site of this particular manufacturing company, that contributes to scope 1. And we do have scope 2, which is again the indirect emissions which is happening outside the facility of the reporting company, but it is predominantly due to whatever the company has purchased in terms of energy. Like for example, there is an office building which uses electricity for its operation, but it is categorized as scope 2. But in a case that the emissions which is happening due to the electricity consumption, it is not happening in the facility of that company, whereas it is happening in the power generation source. In the grid electricity or the thermal power plant where it has been generated. So that is why it is called as a scope 2. And then the last scope is a scope 3, which is very much equal, very much predominantly being talked about in the industry right now. Scope 3 is again the indirect emissions, which is happening not within the facility or not outside the facility due to energy use, but however, it is happening in the upstream as well as downstream parts of the company's operation. So we typically do a boundary definition of how many facilities an industry has, have some activity data collected. Like I said, what is the quantity of fuel, everything which is used, which contributes to GHG emissions. So we have a inventory of all of that consumptions, quantities and everything. And we discuss in elaborate about explaining to the facility about the guidance workshop, how to reduce it and everything. And we also have a set of emission factors which directly allow us to convert all the activity data quantities of fuel, even the refrigerant gas from HVAC and everything, and it will be converted to either absolute emissions of GHG gases in tons CO2e. CO2e again is how we are converting the whole of the GHG emissions of the 7 gases into a carbon dioxide equivalent. So we cannot be giving it as a GHG separately, individually. It is very much difficult to disclose all the 7 gases. So we are trying to convert into a carbon dioxide equivalent, and we will be reporting it in terms of emission intensity per ton, or say absolute emissions in tons of CO2e. So there are multiple standards used. So you can see there is a GHG protocol which gives separate scope-wise guidance and even frameworks for reporting as per ISO 14064 family. So there are multiple other frameworks and ISO codes which is used. And this particular diagram is a typical of whatever I explained about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So here you can see the reporting company in the middle, whatever the direct emissions which is happening within the facility, within the organization, it is called as scope 1 or the direct emissions. While the scope 2, the gray part which is happening indirectly, but the company's use of electricity purchased or fuel which is used for the company's energy, but it is happening outside the facility. So all that is scope 2. Again, scope 3, we have demarcations or we have categorizations in terms of upstream as well as downstream. So upstream, we do have a detailed slides in the upcoming presentation. So there are 8 categories, subcategories in the upstream, as well as 7 categories in the downstream of emissions calculation. So we'll talk about scope 3, upstream value chain emissions. So there are 8 categories, which is talking about the first one, which is the purchased goods and services, which is used by the reporting company. And the second category is directly related to the capital goods. Let's say a company is using many equipments to manufacture the products of their industry, but those capital goods are also using some resources to be manufactured and acquired by the reporting company. So all the embodied emissions associated with the capital goods or the equipments and the machineries is also coming under the scope 3 of the manufacturing or of the reporting company. And there is a scope 3 which is very similar to there is a category 3, fuel and energy related activities, which is very similar to scope 3, but the only difference is the minimum boundary which is required for these categories is your scope 1 and scope 2 of the third party. Basically, scope 3 emissions are the reporting company's emissions, which is indirectly happening, but at the premises of the third party, who is not actually involved in the reporting company's reporting. So there are the category 4 talks about transportation, which is happening in the upstream part and distribution. And the category 5 is the waste generated, which is happening due to the operations of this company. However, if there are again any waste treatments, or let's say an STP or an ETP or even OWC, which is there in the company's premises, that would be accounted in a direct emission under scope 1, while all the other emissions which is happening outside the premises, even the waste treatment which is happening in the landfill through the third party recycler and everything, so that will be accounted in the category 3 of scope 3. Similarly, we do have about travel, the business travels, considered by the employees of the reporting company. So whatever emissions associated with those travel on the business perspective, that is accounted as category 6. And similarly, we have category 7, the employee commute from their workplace to house on an everyday basis. So that is also needs to be accounted by the reporting company under the scope 3 emissions. And the last one in the upstream category is the leased assets. Again, they do have, as a leasee, if they are operating in a leased, let's say a commercial office space, so whatever operations which is happening, which causes emissions, that needs to be accounted under the category 8. So it looks pretty complex, but going forward, the scope 3 is going to be everybody's talk. Right now, all industries are starting to disclose their scope 1 and 2, which is straightforward and it could be easy to start up. But scope 3 will be the future, and everybody will be talking about scope 3 in, let's say, few months' time. And scope 3 will go to the downstream value chain. So similar to upstream, whatever the activities which are happening outside the facility of the reporting company, but in the downstream value chain. So we have 7 categories. I'll just read through, but all the screens will be shared later on for your reference as well. So category 9 is the downstream transportation and distribution related emissions. 10 talks about processing of sold goods, and 11 is the use of sold goods. 12, end of life treatment of sold products and goods, and even 13, which is very similar to our upstream, just downstream leased assets. When a leaser who leases out the commercial space, for example, he needs to account that in scope 1 and 2, in category 3, category 13 of scope 3. And there is again the category 14, which talks about franchises. There are multiple franchises, chain of restaurants or showrooms. So all those comes under the franchisees, category 14 for the major or the parent company who is operating in some other location. And similarly for, let's say a financial institution who invests in the growth of other companies, or they are investing in their own other portfolios, all those banking and financial companies, they will be having their scope 3 accounted in the investments category. So that is the overview about the scope 3 and carbon, corporate level carbon footprint we just saw about. So we will now understand what is the product level carbon footprint. So for any manufacturing industry, there is a product which is associated, and whatever product is manufactured by an industry or an SME, then there are GHG emissions associated or let out into the atmosphere due to its manufacturing. So all that needs to be accounted under the product level. So talking about the product carbon footprint, it is very similar to the CCF. Only thing is the CCF corporate level carbon footprint talks about the a complete, of the reporting company, whatever emissions is happening throughout the operation of that company will be accounted for the CCF. While in PCF, for the company which may produce multiple products, which may manufacture multiple products and services, for each of these products, it is mandatory to report on a carbon footprint at the product level. So all that is coming under the PCF, or the product carbon footprint we call it. And this PCF is done through detailed life cycle assessments. So LCA is another interesting topic. We can also have a separate discussion or session based on that. It's so detailed, but I will try to give an overview about LCA today. So LCA, we have multiple steps, but for PCF right now, we'll talk about the LCA, which has 4 steps, and then PCF is nothing but the output of the result, or output of the result of LCA, which has been verified externally and disclosed in the website or other platforms. So that is the PCF. So there are key pointers which I have mentioned. So PCF is nothing but focusing only on the global warming potential or the carbon dioxide emissions associated with the product, and the standards which is followed due to for the PCF report generation is ISO, as well as we do have GHG protocol product standard. And the verification, it is an optional. It can also be self-assessed, or a third party could be verifying your products PCF, and it is good to go for disclosure. And the use case could be the PCF can be verified and then compiled into an EPD, through other disclosures, which we will talk about in the subsequent slides again. So coming back to PCF's application and benefits. So what should a company do with the PCF? So that is the question I hope all of us have in mind. So we'll talk about it now. So in terms of PCF, there are multiple benefits, but I have tried to put down top 8 or 7 here. So the first benefit is to identify environmental hotspots in a particular product's life cycle. There could be any product for a company's manufacturing, but the owner is required or is mandated to report and account for the carbon dioxide emissions which is happening for the product manufacturing. So, and then if the PCF is there, he can identify what stage of the product manufacturing has the highest carbon dioxide emission. So that hotspots could be identified. And then more than 80% of the impact of a product is identified in the design phase. So whenever a product is designed, in the design phase, the most of the impact in terms of global warming potential is identified, and it can be taken care of in the future to reduce the impact. And 70% of the manufacturing company's footprint is coming from the supply chain. Supply chain as in it could be downstream as well as upstream. And the next point is products determine more than 90% of the total impact for any manufacturer. Typically in India, this is the case. More than 70 to 90% of the emissions which is happening in any Indian industry today is through products which is manufactured. And the other point which is interesting is this PCF, if a company has, it drives 40%, close to 30 to 40% of cost savings through more efficient resource use. Once the company is able to identify which life cycle stage of the product manufacturing is impacting towards sustainability, then he has a strong hold of data and he can rectify any type of problems like efficiently using resources, or it could be electricity, renewable energy, and everything. And the next is the company also has future opportunities to drive innovation for a circular design. Circular design is nothing but when a design of a product is done, it can be reused over and over and again, and it does not end in the landfill, and it is a closed loop. So that is what is called as a circular design or material circularity, and enable product labeling to meet eco-friendly markets. So nowadays, many consumers, customers, everybody is asking for product label, eco labeling. So whether your product is a green product or sustainable product or eco-friendly product. So for all of that, when a company is having a PCF or an LCA in place, it could be tackled. And the last point is the company could demonstrate that it is ready for the upcoming statutory readiness. Whatever statutory requirements or regulations it is upcoming in the future, the company is already ready through the PCF they have. So that is about the product carbon footprint. And we'll now talk about how we link the CCF and PCF part. So PCF, CCF, these are the points I put as a summary. So you can just go through. I don't want to talk again much about it. But in the right hand side, if you can see, we have mapped it in terms of the corporate, wherever the scope 3 upstream emissions are happening. That is exactly where the material acquisition and pre-processing of the products, which is happening in the product level. So ideally, if a corporate is trying to have the upstream and downstream emissions in control, he will have the data collection and the activity data ready at a product level also. So, and even in the scope 1 and 2 emissions part, that decides more about what is the production level energy use, what is the production level fuel use, which is used in the company as well as for the product. It is both mapped accordingly in the production phase. And the downstream scope 3 emissions again talks about distribution, the transportation happening in the downstream, the use phase of it, the use of sold products, processing of sold products, and even end of life, what is happening towards the end of the product's life, whether it is going to be recycled, reused, or going to landfill. All of that is very similar to our categories which we saw under the scope 3 downstream emissions. So this is how we try to map. When a company has a CCF, it is straightforward, and he can, he or she can quickly have some allocation given, and then also calculate the product level carbon footprint for each of the product categories. So there are basically two approaches we follow for our customers who talk about PCF and CCF. The first one is bottom-up approach, which talks about having the product carbon footprint first in place, and then he tries to define individual product system boundary for all his product range, and then he calculates the emission for all the products. And PCF for all the products is the sum of your company's corporate carbon footprint. So similarly, we will have the top-down approach, which is what I just said. A company which has a CCF already in place, he or she can do the allocation and then divide it into organizational level boundaries and talk about multi-facilities and split it or divide it into individual products which the company tried to manufacture. And then he can give individual category wise or a product group wise emissions tagged on all his products. So these are the two approaches we follow, and it is not that difficult to start the exercise. So that is the whole point. Whenever a company is trying to be aligned with the requirements of the customers or the statutory requirement to disclose the carbon footprint, they can either have the PCF started or the CCF started, and it is both interconnected and could be linked and mapped easily. And that is the linking we said. And now we'll talk more about LCA. What is the life cycle assessment? What are the steps? What are the stages and everything? We'll talk about it. And we do have a very small example working how a manual LCA is being undertaken. It was undertaken even before technologies were invented and everything. So if there is time, we will also talk in detail about LCA. So the LCA part is a very globally renowned technology or a methodology which is used to measure a product's environmental impact. It could be anything, not only on the global warming potential. There are more than 23 impact categories, starting from how the product is going to affect the ozone layer, how it is going to have the acidification of the atmosphere, and how it has the eutrophication done to the water resources, and what is the waste generated, how does the waste generated impacts the nature. There are more than 20 plus impact categories. LCA can to focus only on the global warming potential or the climate change aspect of which is due to the GHG emissions. So again, the purpose of LCA is to have a clear idea of what is the environmental impact of your product through its entire lifespan, starting from the raw material sourcing till it has been planning for recycling, reuse, or landfill. Till the whole stage of it, we will try to put all the parameters in place, and we have a LCA model to identify where the problem is happening. And the standards used, we discussed already, it is based on ISO, as well as we do have GHG protocol for that. And what are the major 4 steps are there in LCA? One is we define what is the goal of your LCA assignment, what is the scope or what is the boundary. And the second point is we do a life cycle inventory. Life cycle inventory we'll talk about in some time. And it's just collecting of data which is required for the analysis. And the third step is to have life cycle impact assessment in place, where we originally have an LCA model run. We calculate what is the impact through the LCA and all of that. And the last one is to have the interpretation of the LCA results, how the LCA results could be interpreted to the company, or how the company can use the results in order to productively reuse the product or avoid other impacts of the environment. And the next is we talk about life cycle stages. So what are the typical life cycle stages which is involved in a product? We'll discuss about it, starting from raw materials till end of life phase. And then what are the types of LCA model? So you might have heard, many of you might have heard about cradle to grave, gate to gate and everything. So it is just jumbling of words usually, but we will try to understand today. So this is a typical system boundary diagram we have for LCA. So there are, 3 phases which we discussed in CCF. I try to map it here also, which is the upstream production phase as well as the downstream phase. So in the upstream phase, I have put it in the mapping accordingly. So the A1 and A2 is what we call in the upstream phase, which is the raw materials and transportation of raw materials phase. And the next life cycle stage is the production, the A3 or the manufacturing of the product under study. And the A4, A5 talks about installation, the transportation to the site where it needs to be installed, And the product installation, what is the energy use or water use, what is the impact which is happening due to the installation of that product in the site. And the next life cycle we'll talk about is the product usage. So once the product is being installed where it is required, then throughout the use phase of that product, what is the impact associated? So that's where B1 to B7 is the usage phase, we call it. It talks about product use, maintenance, repair, replacement, refurbishment, and even the operational energy use and the operational water use is also accounted as the product use phase environmental impact. And the last phase we'll have is the end of life, where once the whole, let's say the product is being used for the next 20 years, and after that it is going to the end of life phase. So it could either be deconstructed or demolished, and it could be transported again for another treatment, which is the waste processing, C3. And the last one is the disposal. So here, typically, there should not be any disposal in terms of cradle to cradle. So the first point, the line, if you can see in the below, so that is talking about cradle to cradle, which is the closed loop. As I said, it is designed for a circular economy. So once the raw material from A1 till the product is reaching C4, then the whole of the product is again sent back to the raw material phase where it is completely reused so that nothing is ending up in the landfill. So that is what we call it as a cradle to cradle approach. And the second pointer we have is the cradle to grave. Cradle to grave is once the product is being manufactured, when an LCA is needed to be done for this product only till the disposal phase, and they may not be having any circular redesign in place. So that is where we undertake cradle to grave approach. And the third is the cradle to gate. So cradle to gate is ideally wherever the upstream, the raw material supply or the resources, even the water, energy use and everything, and even the transportation of individual raw materials, wherever the raw materials are being mined before it reaches the factory gate, and even the production, production which is happening or the manufacturing is happening within the gate of the factory. So that also is included and we call it as a cradle to gate. And the fourth one is gate to gate. So gate to gate typically is covering only the factories, in gate till out gate. So this fourth scenario of LCA, gate to gate, is typically used by industries who want to identify hotspots and environmental impact of their production level factory only. So it is totally dependent on what is the goal, what is the scope of LCA. Based on that, we will have to decide the whole of the life cycle models, LCA models, whether it is going to be a cradle to cradle or a cradle to grave or cradle to gate or gate to gate. So this is about the example which I mentioned. So let us try to have an LCA done in, let's say, next 3-4 minutes time. So the first step we decided is to have a definition of goal and scope in place. So here we'll consider a stainless steel water bottle as a scenario. We'll have to do a simple LCA for the, the SS bottle, which we use in our daily life. Let us assume the goal is to have, is to assess the global warming potential of the stainless steel bottle across its life cycle. So the functional unit, and there is a thing called functional unit and declared unit. Functional unit, again, in our case, it's going to be defining of or having the LCA in place for one bottle used over 5 years. It could be 100 bottles used over 10 years or whatever is the number of product which is under study for LCA. That is called as the functional unit. It could be in weight also. Let us say this one bottle weighs 0.5 kg. So our functional unit can also be 0.5 kg of SS bottle. So that could be the defining. It is under our control. We can have the definition of one functional unit before we have the LCA study in place. And the next defining aspect would be on the system boundary. So this particular example, we will talk about cradle to grave approach, because the stainless steel bottle manufacturing company, let us assume they are not having any redesigning or circular designing in place. So we will talk about raw material resources, mining resource, upstream resource till the end of life, which is the grave part. And that is the first step. And moving on to the second step, which is typically the life cycle inventory. Once you have the goal or scope defined for the LCA assessment in place, Then we will start collecting the data which is required, which is ideally the LCI input, we call it, life cycle inventory input, which is the activity data. We want to understand what type of raw materials is being used, what is the quantity of raw materials it's used, and during the manufacturing, what type of energy is used, whether they are using any water for cleaning, lubricants for their equipments, all needs to be accounted. It needs to be collected, gathered, and put as per the reporting formats. And we do have transportation, which is the A4, A2 part in the previous diagram. So how many number of cardboards is getting consumed per bottle to package it and send it to downstream, and what is the transportation distance, or what is the fuel used for this particular truck to carry this bottle. So all the micro level data needs to be taken into account in place of the LCI input, activity data input. And the last is, again, we need to have details about use phase. So whether this bottle over the 5 years time is going to be the maintenance or the repair, or whether there is any water usage happening during the 5 years timeline. So in our case, let us assume there is 500 liters of water which is going to be used over 5 years of time, and we'll also have some maintenance which in terms of cleaning or washing this bottle. So all that is coming under use phase. And the end of life is typically the 90% of recycling which the company has planned, and the 10% of the product they have manufactured is assumed to go to the landfill. And once the input data we have collected all these quantities, there will be equivalent output we need to analyze. So from each of these phases, this will be the typical outputs. Like for example, in the raw materials case, the LCI output would be understanding the GHG emissions from mining and alloying of individual raw materials. And in the case of manufacturing, it will be emissions from the energy use, which is used for the manufacturing of the product. So similarly, these are the outputs. And the third step, once we have listed down all the LCI available for the product, we will talk about how to calculate it, which is the LCIA, or the life cycle impact assessment stage. So here we will again talk about the emission factors. If you remember, we said the same points in the CCF as well. So emission factor databases are they're open source, which are available, like EPA, IEA, EcoInvent, DEFRA. There are many open source softwares which is available also to have the reference for emission factors. And we do have a simple formula: whatever activity data quantity wise we have, multiplied by the emission factor of each of these material, it gives you the GHG emissions or the global warming potential of individual materials. So this calculation has been done, and I have also referred EcoInvent and EPA database to arrive at this emission. So this is typically the LCA result in our case. The raw material stage, there is the 6.5 GWP in terms of kg CO2e. Similarly, for washing end of life, this is the case, and total GWP for one bottle which is used over 5 years, this is the global warming potential. So typically, if we use a stainless steel bottle for 5 years period, it creates 9.7 kgs of CO2e emitted in kgs. Yeah. So, and then here, interestingly, there could be a doubt for all of us in terms of end of life, which is negative. So interestingly, if you have noted in the activity data, the end of life scenario, we have assumed that the company has 90% recycling done and 10% is only going to landfill. So if the more number of number of products the company is manufacturing is being recycled and reused, the impact in the end of life is going to reduce. That is why we are having it as a negative. And the fourth step is, once you have the calculation and emission, we need to interpret, or we need to have the results in an understandable way, because the previous table, it's not very understandable for any person to improve on the process. So we try to put it in the form of graph, and we give some recommendations in terms of which life cycle stage of this product manufacturing has the highest GHG emissions. So in our case, it is the raw materials, which is 0.5 kgs of stainless steel and plastic. It is going to be contributing more than 67% in our case. So the recommendations which we typically use in our study is use recycled steel material instead of a virgin or a completely primary stainless steel. We can also opt for recycled and refurbished stainless steel, and which is properly treated and fit for consumption through bottles and food grade certified. And the second recommendation we give is lightweight. So the product which is weighing overall 750 ml of water bottle, which we said, it could be more than 500 grams. So if we are planning to design a very lightweight, then the raw material is going to go down, and it also reduces your emissions in that phase. And the third recommendation we could ideally have in place is, instead of having only 90%, the company can talk about material circularity, and they can also have buyback policies through the distribution channel and associates, so that any bottle which they have been producing it, and it is reaching their own factory for a recycle or a circular design in place, so that 100% recycling is happening. So this is what is the interpretation of results. And the fifth step is LCA verification and disclosure. So till the results stage, it is just product LCA. So it can be done by any company, no restrictions, no statutory demands and everything. But when it is in the fifth stage, which is the verification and disclosure, then there are multiple regulations, such as the EU, European Commission, or the USA's demand for, everything comes in the picture, and the company is required or mandated to have verification of all the reports and results done at a third party facility, or by independent third party verification, and then that needs to be validated and then certified. So that is the fifth step we are talking about. And once the verification is done, then the company is free to have the disclosures, which could be in the form of EPD or the Environment Product Declaration, PCF or PEF. PEF is nothing but Product Environmental Footprint, which is used in EU terminology. So these are the, in the bottom, I have just noted about what are the individual program operators or, councils for EPDs and PEFs. So that is becoming a mandatory thing for all the SMEs now, that their OEMs or their supply chain or their customers are being asked for a proper product LCA as well as a verified document. So that is about LCA. Now, with the interest of time, we'll quickly move on to reporting readiness through LCA. So once the company has an LCA in place, what can all be done? How can the company be prepared for the future regulations in place? So here, the typical scale starting from voluntary till mandatory. The voluntary phase of reporting all the regulations could be type 1 or type 3 green product certification or eco-labeling in place, which could be in Indian case it is Green Pro, or in UK or US case it could be like C2C or other certifications which is there for product. And this is typically a voluntary thing which is not mandatory. And through these certifications, there is a council who is there to verify it, and then you can disclose it in the website as a product manufacturer. And then the next level of voluntary to mandatory is the BRSR core example, which I have considered for today. BRSR core, again, done by the SEBI Stock Exchange of SEBI in India. They have also mandated the listed companies to have scope 3 being disclosed for the top 250 to 1,000 companies in a staggered way. So if that is the case, all the top 250 companies are going to ask their supply chain for the emissions data. That is where I think BRSR core is trying to move towards the mandatory aspect of it. So the supply chain of individual large corporations and OEMs, if they have a CCF or a PCF in place, then it is going to be useful for their customers to report on BRSR core. And we do have the partially mandatory update in terms of industry directives. For example, the USGBC lead. So there is a requirement or there is a mandate that any LEED certified building, if you want to have, if there should be a certification for your buildings, then you should use products which has a EPD. So EPD or the Environment Product Declaration. So that is the kind of mandatory thing which is happening in India as well as other parts of the world. And the more mandatory or the stringent aspect now it is growing in India is for the top 7 emission intensive sectors. under the India's carbon market, which is the carbon credit trading scheme, which is very recently happening, and will be mandated to all these 7 emission intensive sectors like steel, aluminium, fertilizer, or and other textile or pulp and paper sectors. So these companies, they will be mandated to report on their direct and indirect emissions during the manufacturing. So if that is the case, and if these companies who are doing the CCTS, then their supply chain will be mandated to report on the product level carbon footprint and corporate level carbon footprint. So that is how the mandatory thing or the stringent regulations is moving on in India currently. And this CCTS is going to happen in with effect from April 2026. So it is advisable for any company, any SME or any manufacturing industry to have the PCF or CCF baselining started earlier. And the most mandatory or the stringent thing we hear about currently in India is many companies who are exporting their goods to Europe or the European countries, EU countries, then they will be charged the carbon tax under the EU taxonomy. And there is also a carbon border adjustment mechanism, the CBAM mechanism. They have separate regulatory standards for CBAM, and these export companies who is supplying to EU importer, right? So they will be in a position to have the EPDs or PCFs or CCF in place, so that the importer doesn't avail any carbon tax under EU. So that is the level of stringent requirements and in regulations are happening right now with regards to carbon. And whether it is a CCF or a PCF, reporting and disclosures can any day be challenging. We totally understand, because the product carbon footprint, it's not a one-day activity. The data collection itself is going to take a lot of time, and there are multiple other key challenges in terms of resource availability, the resistance to change. Basically, they have been using business as usual processes and techniques, and suddenly incorporating a sustainability aspect into a company, there's going to be a resistance in the whole culture. And there are evolving stakeholder expectations. So today a company is going to ask scope 1, scope 2. Tomorrow the company will be asked by the customer scope 3, and it is evolving. It's not fixed. The sustainability requirements of each of these stakeholders, it is not fixed for years. It has been changing every day. And how to overcome these challenges? As an Indian industry, we can have collaborative approach in place, and we do have associations like IWMA and other consultancies in place, and even technology tools to assist in terms of your requirements of CCF, PCF, and sustainability initiatives and everything. We do have stakeholder engagement. There are again awareness creations programs towards sustainability happening, like IWMA's webinar right now. So all these are engaging stakeholders. And then we do have streamlining process, how to have the data collection set up through an tally system or an ERP or even manual collection. That needs to be streamlined first. And then the last point is to have a robust monitoring system. So this carbon emission, it's not going to be a one-time activity. This needs to be accounted like our financial accounting on a yearly basis, to understand what is your baseline carbon in the year 1 you accounted for, and where are you in terms of reducing your carbon or the GHG emissions year on year. So for that monitoring and tracking, we need to have a very robust review and verification system in place through the help of technology. So that is where I think the seamless transition towards ESG or the regulatory reporting towards sustainability leadership, that will be in place if we are starting to overcome all these challenges. So typically there are technology solutions we use. Even IWMA also have some technology solutions, and we do have done to couple other companies regarding this technology solutions. We can also talk about in detail at a later stage. And about the sustainability journey, this is just one slide. I will not be taking more time here. So it is just that there are 4 phases we have split into. First is the baselining. A company, when it is in the start of sustainability journey, a company should start baselining what is the current status of energy, water use, and even the carbon scope 1, scope 2 at a corporate level as well as at the product level baselining. That should be the first phase. And the second phase, it should go for verification. So once a product LCA or a CCF is baselined within the company, the second phase should be verification, whether I am doing the current or the correct baselining which is there, I have done. So that needs to be done. And then, as I said, the technology solutions for year-on-year monitoring needs to be in place. And the third phase is to improve. So once you have your baselines verified, then obviously you should have your targets and reduction plans to reduce your GHG emissions and improve on your GHG practices. You do have the supply chain assessment needs to be done. And then for the PCF, there are supply chain or the raw material, tracking from the supply chain and the downstream that needs to be assessed for the reduction. And then the last phase is you have the regulatory reporting. So once you have all the baseline data, LCA, CCF, and which is verified through having your EPDs and PCFs, and there is also a technology solution to help you monitor on a yearly basis, and you are also having plans to, let's say, integrate renewable energy or reduce your carbon footprint through other measures. Then your last phase is towards your sustainability leadership, which is going to be prepared for CBAM if you're starting to export, or be aligned with the CCTS, Indian Carbon Markets requirements as well for products. And if you're going to be excelling in your sustainability journey, as a company should start the voluntary ESG reporting. It could either be as per GRI standards or BRSR. So these are the things I have made for today, but we can, if time is available, I can also talk about 2-3 case studies. Typically, how a manufacturing company, which is steel manufacturing, they have problems to reduce the carbon footprint because it is from an emission intensive sector. So how the approach has been taken by the company to have LCA, to have cradle to gate assessment first, and then they improved their LCA to cradle to grave, and the LCIA assessment has been done, and they have been doing some independent verification also of the LCA, and how the impact and how the our approach and their approach towards sustainability have impacted the client in a positive way. Is that end of the day, the steel manufacturing company has type 1 eco-label in place. They are Green Pro certified product, and type 3 eco-label, again the EPD as per ISO, that is also in place with this company. And with that certification and eco-labeling in place, the company is also preparing itself towards supplying to the global market currently. And the second point is the company has also achieved a carbon intensity starting from more than 1,200 in the first year of baselining. And in the second year, after some improvement measurements, they have got it down to 850 kg CO2e per ton of steel which is produced. And currently, the most recent data is from 850 last year. They have also achieved close to 590 kg CO2s of per ton. And this has also given a benchmarking for where they are located. Like in India, the similar steel manufacturing companies are in the range of close kg CO2e per ton of steel which is produced. So in that way, this company is very much reducing, very much having initiatives and measurements in place to start reducing and start improvising the sustainability journey. So through this, all of the 3 years of PCF, CCF, and LCA practices undergoing, the company is now has achieved 4-star rating in the green steel certification which is mandated for all the steel companies in India. So this is one case study I thought it will be relevant, and these are other case studies where the companies have also done the CCF to start with, and they do have done the decarbonization roadmap, which is reducing the CCF starting from scope 1, scope 2 in the first year. And the second year, they started baselining their scope 3, which is pretty much tough for a retail company with multi-tenants. And the third year, they have also planned to reduce the scope 3 emissions, which is ideally in, helping them to disclose the whole of CCF to their investors And they have also a data-driven technology solution in place for year-on-year monitoring, and how it has impacted, how this staggered stepwise sustainability initiatives has impacted this client is that typically the energy savings in this particular retail building or retail mall, they have saved up to 13 to 15% of energy consumption. And then it has also given so much cost savings in terms of 23 million rupees. And the decarbonization roadmap, what they have in place throughout the 3-year journey is that the company will become carbon neutral by 2047. Or, we can also have it as a net zero, which they have included scope 3. And we do have their, LCA of this building because it's not a product. It is a company has facility, retail facility. So they have also gone for embodied carbon of the building, which is the LCA of the whole building they have accounted for. And the upcoming buildings, they are planning to design as a construction, as a retail company who builds and owns assets. So they have also planned to reduce the embodied carbon up to 14%, which is a big deal in India currently. And through all of this, the company has been, achieving so much in the space of LEED, USGBC LEED certifications, or they have also satisfied the stakeholders, the investors and the other external stakeholders has been satisfied with their ESG maturity for the past 3 years. And there is another hospital company. I don't want to take more time here. It's very similar to the previous case study. But the thing is, they are multi-facility based in India, Western India, more than 11 facilities they have. So they wanted to have a data monitoring system in place, and they do not have any, CCF or any relevant decarbonization roadmap done. So that was their ask. And then the approach they have taken is to have the sustainability audits for the energy consumption reduction and everything on place. And then with that, they have also achieved a energy savings of the range of 10 to 15% on an annual basis. And then they have also, with the scope 3 emissions baselining, they are also planning with the green procurement strategy, which is reducing their overall scope 3 currently. And being a hospital, company, this company is also evaluating the climate risk, which the facility will be imposed to in the future. So like, for example, the nature hazards in terms of flood or heat waves, all that is being assessed. And now this hospital group is achieving towards reporting on the ESG as per IFRS S2 or, other disclosures demanded by the stakeholder. So I think these are the case studies we have put for today. If you have any further questions, and if we have time currently, we can surely go for it. I'm done here. Bala, Bhaskaran sir, you can let me know if there is time availability.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, kindly ask in the chat box.
Ma'am, I have one question, whether I can ask.
Yes, sir, please.
Ma'am, first of all, thank you so much for your useful insights, with a lot of valuable insights in the session. Thank you so much. I have one question. We are into food manufacturing multinational company. For a sustainability part, to reduce the scope 3, we have introduced a scheme called as a EV vehicle scheme for our employees for commuting, and they have their own vehicle also EV. But my question is, the EV is a sustainable part, but the electricity source is from the coal. And apart from that, we have a battery, which is a lead acid battery. How we can take it further with the sustainability? Can you please throw some light on this?
Sure. Thanks for your insightful question. So I think nowadays every company is talking about moving on to electricity, EV vehicles usage, and complete electrification of their processes and production. So that way, it is a good thing that the whole of the country or the approach we have today is moving towards electrification. Because there's another aspect we need to understand is as an individual company, we are not able to integrate renewable energy so much, but there is another factor which is called as the grid decarbonization. So as a electricity grid, India is currently closer to 25 to 30%, which has been already decarbonized in the grid, which means the renewable energy in terms of gigawatts closer to 252, if I'm not right. If I'm closer to the value, that much renewable energy has been integrated into the grid electricity or at the generation source in the electricity grid. So if that is the case, if all of us are trying to move towards electrification and EV vehicles usage, then it is a one step ahead that as a country we are moving towards electrification, and there is the decarbonization in the grid, which itself will try to reduce the carbon emissions end of the day through renewable energy integration. The second point is, as an individual, if each company is starting to have their own renewable energy in terms of solar or other biogas or even other biomass usage inside, then that will be involving so much capital cost. So that way, I think each company should also try to move towards electrification, which will be aligned towards the country's net zero goals. And with respect to your batteries question, I think nowadays the batteries which are used in EVs, they are also having the research done because it can be recycled and it needs to be reused, but they have not given any solutions as such. But again, with the LCA in place, they will be in a position to work out on the recycling and reusing, or once again having the cradle to cradle approach for all the EVs.
Yeah,
Hope
thank
that
you.
answers partially.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. But I need one more clarification. How much of power plant in India is thermal based, coal based? What is the
So the
percentage of?
exact numbers I do not have in the number, but out of which the targets currently we have is by 2045, there will be more than 50% of carbon emission intensity reduction in terms of the grid, the thermal power plant integration at the national level. And as I said, it is closer to 252 gigawatts, which is there, the renewable energy integration currently, but the number I am not currently aware or in top of my mind for you. I can also check and let you know the renewable energy status currently.
But I heard in India, 70% of power plants are running with the coal. Is it
Yes,
true,
that
ma'am?
is right. So, yeah. So with 25 to 30% currently in renewable energy, so as a nation, we do have our own targets. We have time till 2045 to increase on your renewable energy capacity and everything. The country is working towards it through all initiatives like water, hydraulic power, even solar plant. They are planning to have multiple places. So all of that in place. But as a country, it is very difficult to align, and we do have time till 2045. So hopefully, India, we achieve the targets for renewable energy by the time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, I just want to know that how can many companies accurately measure the report's scope 3 downstream emission without double counting while
Sorry,
staying
sir.
compliant with it? How can the company accurately measure the report scope 3 downstream emissions?
Okay. So let us take an example case. For example, so if there's a yes, sir. So if there's a company.
I'll just close the issue. I'll close the question. In fact, I just want to know about the report scope 3 downstream emissions without double counting while staying compliant with the GSG protocol.
Correct. So your question is, how does companies cater to or address the problems of double accounting under scope 3 downstream emissions?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the
Yeah.
downstream emissions is a very tricky point. That's a wonderful question, Mr. Mahesh. So I think the companies currently who are disclosing their scope 1 and 2 have just started with their upstream disclosure of carbon emissions scope 3. But those companies who are manufacturing, let's say, a washing machine or a laptop today, those companies, they are also mandated to disclose their scope 3 downstream, because all these equipments like washing machine or laptop, they have their hotspots lying in the use phase or the downstream where the product is being used towards, let's say, for 10 to 20 years timeline. So how does the company avoid double accounting? So let's say a company which manufactures the laptop, they are supposed to account for a very generic use phase. One laptop is going to consume so much kilowatt hour or so much units of electricity throughout its use phase. That is the assumption a company does. And with that assumption, there will be equivalent carbon dioxide emissions, which is calculated. And the company accounts for this emissions, which is happening in the use phase and in the end of life as downstream. But the thing is, it is not double accounted because this is coming in the scope 3 of the company which manufactures the laptop. While there will be the users, right? For example, the laptop users, then they will also account for the electricity which is used, but not in their scope 3. It will come as a part of their scope 1 and scope 2. So even though there are confusions that these are being double accounted, but as a company level and as a user level, it is totally different based on the boundary. Also, even though you can talk about double accounting, and there are confusions happening with respect to downstream specifically, because it is very tricky to have the calculations in place. So what is happening currently is these companies who are accounting for downstream, category 3, scope 3, they are reporting it or publicly disclosing it, and the users, they are also reporting on the scope 1 and 2, which will ideally be the same. But end of the day, the plan to have the carbon accounting in place is to reduce your overall carbon accounting or the overall carbon emissions. So it is no way going to be tallied, or nobody is mandated to have a cross check that you have accounted for this, so I will not accounted for this. So I will not be accounting for the scope 1 and 2. So it is not the case. So it is the overall aspect that each user as well as the manufacturer of the product should have a holistic view of. So I'm contributing to so much GHG emissions or carbon emissions through my usage of laptop. So as a user, I also are accountable to reduce my usage or reduce my emissions. And as a manufacturer, I will also have to have some buyback policies in place so that my scope 3 is also getting accounted. So it is not like, the accounting should be nullified or it cannot be double accounted, but it is ideally for the users and manufacturers to have the responsibility and accountability to reduce the carbon emissions. I hope I
Thank you, Kirtan. Thanks.
partially answered. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am.
Thanks for the information.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's a wonderful session indeed. Lot of things get clarified. Indeed, whatever we were in kind of ambiguity, whom to ask, how to get this kind of sources. Now, I have one a question. I'm not maybe not right way to ask, but still, see, ours is a recycling plants. Recycling
Okay,
organization. Normally, we source scrap from different sources. Where sustainability sourcing is a big task. I'm saying whatever sourcing points. So we source from different kind of countries, different sources. So most of them are traders. Normally they collect, they store, and they sell it. That's how basically happening. Be it plastic or be it lead kind of thing or copper, those kind of recycling things. Basically, they say scrap. So scrap it's a good, I mean, like, collecting scrap from traders. So we are facing little kind of, like difficulties in terms of sustainable sourcing. So can you throw any light on this? How to make, because we just try to do it in organized way. Just trying our best. No, though we are not no mandated to do this, but still we are. I mean, we are doing on own basis.
Currently,
So
what are you having in practice, sir, to get your recyclers on
no,
board?
no. Basically, we procure from we import.
Mm.
We import major and even local sources also, like plastic waste and aluminum, you name it, or even lead, those kind of things. We procure from traders. That's how practice is. No, we cannot, because see, sourcing is so. So
Right.
plastic sourcing is so it's so, like, you not expect a company to like produce scrap. It's not
Correct.
produced. It's only collection.
Got it. Got it. I understand. So that is the challenge you are facing to source the recycled, or the to be recycled used products. So
Correct.
I got your point, sir. So there are 2-3 aspects to it. So the first one would be to engage your stakeholders. It could be your traders from whom you are trying to source their products, their
Yeah.
used products. So you can properly engage them, encourage them through any incentive program. That is what many companies are doing nowadays. By incentivizing the whole of the scrap collection process, then there will be a demand which is created amongst the traders. That is one aspect. The
Okay.
second is engaging them would be in terms of, you can also have some grouping or categorizing of your traders, and you can try to group them as the top tier, like let's say, who are encouraging, who are willing to move towards sustainability. That is the category 1. And medium category and low category, you can also start grading or ranking and have some engagement programs to these traders, so that they are feeling recognized by this practice of towards contributing towards material circularity. That is the second aspect. And the third aspect is, interestingly, nowadays there are credits, like you might have known about plastic credits, carbon
Yeah,
credit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and EPR regulations also
EPR,
are.
yes, 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 yes.
Yes. So yeah, if that is the case, you can also have a approach, rather than approaching the traders or the intermediary bodies who are dealing with scrap. You can also approach to the original factory which is generating scrap. So through that, the company will also have the EPR in place, and all the intermediary challenges can be overcome, I feel. So these are the 3 aspects which comes to my mind currently.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But
yeah,
actually, ma'am, practically, in practical thing, I'm saying, I'm opening up. Actually, I'm not in an open session kind of thing, no.
correct.
So it is like, no, whatever we source, whatever I'm saying plastic mainly. Okay, we collect from like scrap collectors. So they have big godowns, good. I mean, they have their own way of functionings, and
Correct.
these type of kind, they are a traditional kind of business they do. They procure, they sell it. If you want to buy the others, you go off. That's all. That's how it is. So I mean, competition also very high. No, like they don't bother,
Correct.
like, to bind our lines.
Got it, sir. Got it.
That's just I don't know how to go about. I mean, from next year, I mean this year onwards, we want to make it little greener.
Absolutely, sir. That is
We
your
already
good
initiated. We
initiative.
already initiated. We already initiated. Uh, just know if anything, no, I'll be in touch. If anything comes,
Sure.
no, we can let me also put it with my management. So how to,
Yes.
if anything,
That is
we
what, sir.
can
I
work
think,
out. No?
sure, sir. We can connect along with IWMA also. We can also have
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good
So
media. Yeah,
as I
definitely.
said, yes, sir. So as I said, these 3 initiatives is what other companies who are in your field, they are practicing. There is also a requirement. For example, the companies should have the engagement which is happening from the supplier end. They should have a procurement policy. All of that is
Correct.
theoretical. I totally understand, but your practical challenges needs to be overcome through some incentivization or recognition programs that the trader or the source creator needs to be motivated. Should
Correct.
also think about sustainability and not think about any problems he is facing. He's not very lethargic. So that way we have to think through the practical issues, and then we
Yeah.
can surely help out. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for time and wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So nice of you.
Ma'am, this is Vinod again. Ma'am, what is the
Yes.
emission contribution of this poultry sector and dairy sector, ma'am? Because that is also another big sector growing drastically in India. Can you please explain what is the contribution of methane and carbon emission from poultry sector and dairy sector?
So poultry sector is one, you said. The other one, sorry?
Dairy sector, milk sector.
Dairy sector, yes. So as I said now, so in the first 2-3 slides I've shared, the agriculture sector and the waste in landfill, they are contributing so much towards the methane emissions. Even the poultry sector and the agriculture sector, even the dairy sector, they are feedstock, right? So all of them is contributing towards 100% of methane emission, which is happening in India currently. So about that, I think it should be a holistic approach we should consider. We should also go forward with other solutions like go green and not harming the nature, reducing the slaughter which is happening and all of that. But that is all again not practical, I understand totally. But nowadays these emissions which cannot be avoided, like from the agriculture sector, these companies, agriculture companies and other feedstock or from dairy, they are trying to offset it, through other carbon sequestration measures. They are also trying to offset it by having solar plant in their own fields. They're also going towards agroforestry. So there are 2-3 other initiatives like this which can be offsetted rather than reducing from the source. This because these are not abatable emissions. It is going to happen any point of time till anybody stops having dairy or poultry, then it is not avoidable. So that it is the only viable option we can think about is on the carbon sequestration through plantations and agroforestry. And the other thing is starting the green practices, like the treatment of whatever waste, agricultural waste, like stubble burning, which is happening in the atmosphere for the feedstock, that can be reduced and it can be done in a waste to energy, the WTE concept, if you might have known, that can also be happening within the industries. So for all other industries where these waste from agriculture can be used as biomass for energy creation, that can be diverted properly. That is the other solution which comes to my mind today. But if further solutions, I can also think about it and let you know.
But I think still it is very challenging and we have to go for a long because
Long way down the line, correct.
Correct. Because just you take this Haryana farmers and this Chandigarh farmers, they are burning the waste and creating lot of pollution and nuisance in Delhi and near the area. Still, people
Correct.
awareness is very, very important.
Interestingly, last 2-3 months before, we worked with a client who is actually using this agricultural waste from Haryana and Punjab, and they are making panel boards. They are also replacing the wood quantity in the panel boards or doors which we use in our household. So the door and panels, window panels, is completely made from the agricultural waste only. So, the innovations are happening in the market, but it is about the companies to start innovating and then reducing the emissions holistically with the holistic thoughts of sustainability.
Thank you, ma'am. Very useful insights. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Satish Kumar has posted a question about emission factor in the chat box. So can we use any emission factor like eco-invent for the standards like GRI and EcoVadis? Right. So I think we can also start using the openly available emission sources. Like for example, before having the eco-invent in place, we do have for scope 1 and scope 2 emissions primarily, we use mainly our Indian or regional level particular CEA, Central Electricity Authority. They also have developed emission factors for the grid electricity. And there is the other open sources like US EPA and International Energy Agency, IEA. They do have published emission factors, which is talking predominantly about scope 1 and 2. But when it comes to scope 3 baselining and quantification, there is a need for having other databases in place like EcoInvent for general procurement materials for all sectors. EcoInvent is applicable, and there is another database interestingly called as AgroBalance. AgroBalance is particularly talking about those resources and those products which is used in the agricultural sector. So the emission factors of all the raw materials which used in the agricultural sector, that will be there in the AgroBalance specifically. There are multiple emission standards, emission databases which could be used to start off with. But yeah, you can also start using the openly available sources to start off with. Thank you. And Mr. Veerapandian has been asking about end of life, minus 1.5. Please explain end of life care and technical context. You are referring a specific product or system with minus 1.5. Yeah. So I think in the example which we talked about the LCA calculation of the SS bottle. So the end of life, interestingly, it was in the negative basis. That again, there is another interesting concept in the end of life, which have not been covered in my session today. That is about taking credits or benefits in the end of life, as well as the environmental burden in the end of life. Benefits and burden, there are two aspects which I have not touched upon today. But in our case, when the SS bottle, we assume that it is going to be 90% recycled. So that way it is referring to the product, the product, 90% of the product which is assumed to be produced and used over the 5 years time. That will be out of which the 90% and the equivalent emission factor applied, it has come up to minus 1.5. It is not about the system. It is about the product which is used which has been recycled towards 90%. But if it has been instead of 90%, it would have been 100%. Then it could be not minus 1.5. It could be more than 1.5. It could be in the range of minus 2 or minus 2.1 or something. So ideally, if it is minus, it is called as benefits. So your overall impact of the product, the LCA result is getting reduced by this negative factor. So it is beneficial to have recycling in place. That is the technical meaning of this. And if there is a positive sign in the end of life, then we call it as an environmental burden, which is it is impacting, it is the end of life treatment like landfilling or waste to energy. In fact, that is also adding up to your environmental impact at the end of the day. That is the meaning of it. So hope I am clear with the question. And there is another question. As a recycler, how do we calculate the baseline emissions from landfill disposal? So as a recycler, for a recycler, it will be your own scope 1 and scope 2, which needs to be accounted for. But the company which is generating the waste and it is giving to the recycler, like, the third party for them, then it will be the scope 3 for the company which generates waste. But as a recycler, it is your scope 1 and scope 2. Like, for example, if a recycler company is having the waste to energy or any process related treatments which is happening in your facility, what is the energy used, what is the fuel used in your recycling facility will be your emissions which you need to baseline it. And for you, if you're if you're sending it to the landfill disposal, then again it will be calculated in your scope 3 category 5 only. Hope I was clear. Yeah. So I think if there are no further questions for today, we can end the session. Bala, Bhaskaran sir, if you are there, maybe we
Ma'am,
can.
if you permit, I can ask a last question. One more question.
Yeah, sure, Vinod.
Ma'am, we are talking about carbon emission and all, but our ritual water bodies and all, slowly it got polluted, and we are going to be lack of resources in future. Whether any actions are taken from the government to control these activities, no? Especially the polluting the water bodies?
Yes. So I think I have an interesting thing which is happening here in India, especially in Chennai area for the lake encroachments and everything. So there is an interesting concept which is called as the PPP, or sorry, public-private people partnership. PPP, associations are there, which is being now undertaking the lake cleaning and stopping the encroachments of lake activities. And in that, we do have academicians and industries as partners, like how IWMA is an association which has many associates from industries. From Chennai. So we do have this PPP partnership, which is happening in the leadership of, under the leadership of academicians like IIT professors, and even the government body and the locality, the people. The third P is the people. So there are localities around the lake in Chennai, that whatever localities, they are having some associations to protect these lakes. So all these associations are also members through the PPP approach, and they are trying to stop encroaching, and with some dredging activities going on, that lake encroachment and pollution is being tried to reduce currently. But I don't know how far it is impacting. But on a national or a policy level, I think Government of India and State Government of Tamil Nadu also, they are having some steps taken towards rejuvenating the lakes and stopping pollution.
So, ma'am, actually, I am staying near to one of the lake which is supplying water to Chennai, Pudal Lake. I used to see lot of wastewater and domestic waste and other waste dumped daily into the lake. As I said, that PP may be a small stone in the ocean, I think so. There is a long way to go.
Correct.
Because
It is
daily I'm
just
seeing that
individual steps which needs to be taken. There should be some people-headed associations happening in these localities. So once those associations are formed, and they can have the partnership with IIT Madras people and the local councillors who are also taking initiatives. Once there is an agreement or an MOU signed under the PPP approach, then the actions are taken. That I am also witnessing, because in my area also we have lakes, and we have continuous engagement of communities happening. And interestingly, there are also other industries. If in your locality, if there are industries, you can approach to them, as their CSR activities also linked to the lake cleaning and everything. So these industries or other corporates in your locality, they do have some targets, year targets for CSR initiatives and amount spent in CSR. So that way, it is another approach, is that these companies, I mean, these associations in your locality, or as an individual, you can also approach to these companies as and request them to take care of their CSR initiatives through lake cleaning or plantations or anything. That is also happening right now.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We all are come to the end of the session. I thank Swasthi Krithivasan, ma'am, for the enlightening speech about bridging product and corporate carbon accounting, regulatory rated for Indian industries. We really appreciate you on behalf of our IWMA office barriers, executive members, senior manager, and participants. I thank entire participants for joining the webinar. Once again, thank you all, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for participating today. Thank you.